Thank you, Tipton County. When my brothers and I first got here, people said we were out of our minds to have over 300 vehicles in stock. But we did it so we could keep the business local, keep our tax dollars here. We've got 125 trucks in stock, extended cab, regular cab, anything you can think of. 185 cars, late model, older, whatever you want. We've got the economy lot in the center of town. And we want to thank Tipton County for supporting us. We're selling lots of vehicles, and we are definitely the customer satisfaction leader.
The opinions expressed on this program are those of the program participants and or the callers, and not necessarily those of Instar Communications, the Covington Broadcasting Corporation, Falcon Cable Television, KBJ Television Channel 29, or any of their sponsors.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to Let's Talk. Tonight we're going to be talking about natural gas vehicles. Many of you have been hearing about this subject for quite some time, and I know you've been watching with interest as our natural gas service station near the Covington Public Works building has been going up. We're going to be talking to Mark Brown, who is the Deputy Director of Public Works in the city of Covington, and we're going to do a few introductory remarks about why should we change from liquid gas to natural gas, and then we're going to show you a video which has a very compact presentation of things that natural gas is being used for and why. So we're going to be giving the positive approach here, but we want you to call in with any questions you may have, any comments. You may disagree with some of the things that have been done or that are being done. We'd be glad to hear from you. The numbers are there on your screen. If you call one number and it's busy, call the other one. If they're both busy, just wait a minute and Mark will be glad to answer your questions. We'd be especially glad to hear from you, but I believe I'll ask you, since we're going to show the video early in the program, to wait until after the video to make your calls. Mark, I know this is a subject that has drawn a lot of conversation around the city in the past several weeks and months, and I know you've made several presentations to different organizations, haven't you?
Yes, sir, and it's been real interesting. I spent about the last 18 months learning all about it myself, and now it's just come to the point where I'm trying to educate everybody else, and from what I've learned.
Well, without talking about the station itself, let's talk about some general things about why should you change. What is the advantage of changing to natural gas for use in vehicles?
I think there's four main advantages. The main one that I see is an environmental advantage, because natural gas is so much cleaner fuel and it doesn't contribute to the pollution of our environment. The other reasons are that it's actually a more efficient fuel because it burns cleaner. It is less maintenance on your vehicle. It is economic because it's about half the price of gasoline per equivalent gallon. And the other thing, and this may be equally important, is that it's actually proven to be a safer fuel than gasoline.
I feel sure that that a lot of people are thinking in terms of gas stoves and gas heaters and things that have exploded or things that have ignited, and we're going to see this in the video, but at the same time it has been proven to be safer than liquid gasoline, hasn't it?
Well, the big difference is that compared to gasoline, is you have your gasoline tank in your car, you have 20 gallons of liquid gas that's stored in a thin sheet metal container that can puncture real easy, and the gasoline will just puddle up and it's there. It's waiting for sparks to happen. Whereas natural gas is in cylinders that have been tested and tested and tested and just don't explode. They don't have these problems. And even if there is a leak, it just dissipates quickly into the atmosphere.
That gas is heavily compressed, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
We have a call. We'll go ahead and take it even though we asked him to wait. Yes, you have a comment or question?
Yes, I'm curious. I understand the city has bought a couple of trucks that are already suited for this. Is my first question. Want to know if that's true. And my second question is, if the plant is not, the filling station is not in function right now, why did the city buy that? And I'll let you go and let Mark answer that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You bought more than two, haven't you?
We have three. The city's purchased 3 natural gas pickup trucks. We got them, I guess, about 2 months ago, and we got an excellent deal on them, I guess is the answer to the question. We haven't been fueling them up. The fueling station should be ready to go on Thursday of this week.
Okay. So it hadn't been in use yet, but it's been in the process.
That's
well,
right.
we can talk about those vehicles a little bit more. this video that we're going to see in a few minutes talks about the non-explosive characteristics, and that tank apparently is extremely durable, because you're dropping those cars from way up in the air and it doesn't puncture, and when it punctures it still doesn't ignite. The gas just went off into the atmosphere.
Yeah, it has a lot more narrow window of flammability. For combustion to occur, the air-fuel mixture is so much more narrow window than it is with gasoline.
Yeah. Well, the tanks, you mentioned the cleanness. That would keep your spark plugs from wearing out and stuff like that in the engine, right?
You know, there's a lot of other places in the country where natural gas vehicles are a lot more commonplace, particularly in private vehicle fleets. And they've found that maintenance costs have been reduced 50 to 70%. They change oil rather than 4 times a year, once a year. Tune-ups, the same difference. You know, it's up to 3 or 4 times more time between tune-ups.
Yeah. What about temperature changes? Of course, we don't have a lot of vast temperature changes here, but does natural gas, do natural gas vehicles start in extreme heat and extreme cold like they would in other parts of the country?
It's proven to be actually better in cold starting conditions, because it's already a gas and you don't have to make that conversion in your combustion chamber.
Oh, I see. Well, listen, let's look at that video, and we're going to show you the video, ladies and gentlemen. It lasts about 12 minutes. And it contains a lot of information. I think it will answer a good many of your questions, but Mark and I are going to talk about some of these very things that are in the video again after it's been concluded, and we would love to hear from you. We'd like for you to ask questions about our local situation here. We're going to talk a little bit more about the station itself and the buying of the vehicles and some of the other questions I'm sure you have, but watch the video just now and see how many of your questions will be answered by it.
I'm Boone Pickens, Chairman of the Natural Gas Vehicle Coalition. Welcome to the pilot edition of NG Vision. This program is designed to keep you up to date on the latest developments in the fast-growing field of natural gas vehicles. Natural gas is the transportation fuel of the future. I'm betting on it, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is. My own personal car, this 1991 Cadillac, has been converted to run on natural gas. Instead of stopping at the gas station, I fill up overnight right here at my home. I pay 60 cents for the natural gas equivalent of a gallon of gasoline, which sells for $1.20 at the corner service station. Because they are clean burning and run on American fuel, NGVs are becoming a much more frequent sight on our nation's highways. But there's still a long way to go to get the message out. The message that NGVs are safe, efficient, and good for the environment. In a recent speech to the Detroit Economic Club, I predicted that gasoline may well be obsolete as a transportation fuel by the turn of the century. The development of the natural gas vehicle market will be the business story of the 1990s, and this program will go a long way in telling that story.
They're a familiar sight in plants and warehouses. Hundreds of thousands of lift trucks powered by propane, gasoline, or diesel fuel rolling through the aisles, some of them going 24 hours a day. But this lift truck is different. The cylinder is filled with compressed natural gas, not propane. This is the first factory-built lift truck designed to run on natural gas. It was unveiled recently at the Lexington, Kentucky plant of the Clark Material Handling Company. Clark, the manufacturer of the leading brand of lift trucks in the United States, worked with Columbia Gas Distribution Companies for about a year to develop the Clark Clean Lift. This cooperative effort resulted from the realization that lift truck users are facing tougher federal standards for indoor air emissions. These new OSHA guidelines call for reducing the exposure of workers to pollutants, especially carbon monoxide. Natural gas provided the perfect solution. Test results from an independent laboratory showed the Clark Clean Lift reduced carbon monoxide emissions by up to 95% compared with propane. The natural gas-powered lift truck also outperformed lift trucks operating on LPG and gasoline. And of course, operating costs are reduced because of lower fuel costs and less frequent maintenance. Clark is now making the natural gas-powered lift truck available through its extensive dealer network in North America. Response to the new model has been overwhelming, and other lift truck manufacturers are expressing interest in developing their own natural gas-powered models. With more than 500,000 internal combustion engine lift trucks in use around the country today, there's a tremendous market for a cleaner burning model. And since the average lift truck should use about 300 MCF a year, roughly about the same amount as 3 houses, this represents an exciting opportunity for the natural gas industry. Which came first, the NGV or the NGV filling station? Having access to a fueling facility for a natural gas vehicle is getting easier every day. And for the folks in Sacramento, it's as easy as pulling in at the familiar Shell oil sign. California Governor Pete Wilson was on hand as the first retail natural gas pump was put into service recently. Pacific Gas and Electric worked with Shell to make the service available to fleet operators who have signed contracts with PG&E for natural gas service. They use key cards to automatically activate the pump, record the amount of gas used, and charge it to their account. PG&E has worked with a number of companies to establish NGV fleets, companies like Edmunds Bakeries in Northern California.
The results have been great. Pollution is reduced, we have a more dependable fuel source, and we also have something that is less costly than gasoline.
The U.S. Postal Service has also been converted. Some vehicles in their Concord, California fleet are relying on natural gas to help them make their daily deliveries. Federal Express and a local school district are among several other PG&E customers testing NGVs. Eventually, the sponsors of this station hope to make the service available to the public so that any NGV can refuel at Shell. PG&E is seeking approval to add 19 more stations to the company's current group of 14 company-owned fill stations by the end of 1992. Those stations stretch from Bakersfield to San Francisco. 6 natural gas pumps would also be installed at oil company service stations such as Shell. Some of North America's brightest automotive engineering students gathered at the University of Oklahoma in June to participate in the first NGV Challenge, sponsored by the Society of Automotive Engineers and organized by the Department of Energy's Argonne National Laboratory. 24 teens were given identical GMC Sierra pickup trucks several months ago, with the challenge of converting them to run as efficiently as possible on natural gas. All of their hard work was put through extensive testing at the National Institute for Petroleum and Energy Research. The trucks were subjected to temperatures of 20 below zero to see how quickly they would start. Acceleration tests over a 1,000-foot straightaway let judges see how the engines performed with and without a 1,000-pound load. And a 180-mile road rally tested endurance and economy. When all 8 performance categories were judged, the University of Tennessee drove off with top honors after pausing long enough to collect a $5,000 check, part of the $21,000 in total prize money.
All 3 of us and many other team members that were on the team pulled all-nighter after all-nighter, and we're just happy that we managed to stick it out, and Lady Luck was with us, and we won the competition. The teens will keep the trucks and return again next year to see how many improvements can be made once they go back to the lab to fine-tune their engines.
Persisting misimpression that a vehicle using compressed natural gas would be hazardous in the event of a collision. The following series of tests, however, demonstrate that vehicles fitted with the new CNG fuel cylinders can withstand substantial collisions without creating serious hazards. Dropped from 30 feet, this 1966 Pontiac was moving at approximately 30 miles per hour at the point of impact. That is the maximum speed at which new car makers are required to test the integrity of conventional gasoline tanks. The CNG cylinder, pressurized to a standard 3,000 psi and mounted in the trunk of the car, withstood the rear-end crash with no meaningful damage or dislocation. Fuel lines to the engine were kinked, but showed no damage. Subsequently, the same cylinder withstood pressurization to 7,500 psi, the minimum burst pressure required by federal and Canadian government authorities, showing that the tank had maintained its integral strength despite the crash. This Ford Maverick impacts at 39 miles per hour. The car's rear end collapses against the solid floor, substantially wrecked. But again, the CNG cylinder remained intact and undamaged. At 70 feet, this 1973 Oldsmobile has accelerated to approximately 46 miles per hour at impact. The momentum of the engine mass actually increases the severity of the crash. Yet there was no damage to the cylinder or any indication of movement. It stayed securely locked in its brackets. The valve and pressure relief device on the cylinder remained intact and functional. At 90 feet, this 1973 Mercury Marquis is traveling at approximately 52 miles an hour at the time of impact. As in most of these tests, the gas tank is clearly destroyed by the crash. The engine is torn loose from its mounts, and the frame bends. Yet, ironically, the 2 CNG cylinders, 10 and 13 inches in diameter, actually absorbed and distributed a portion of the energy of impact. At the same time, they survived the crash intact and were still functional. Note that even if these new CNG fuel tanks had allowed the escape of gas, there would have been no pooling of a flammable fuel near the wreckage. Unlike propane or gasoline, natural gas is lighter than air and vents off into the atmosphere.
Hello, I'm Boone Pickens, chairman of the Natural Gas Vehicle Coalition. Across America, more than 22 million students board familiar yellow buses for the trip to and from school. In this edition of NG Vision, we're here at the Garland School District outside Dallas to look at the growing interest in school buses fueled by clean-burning natural gas, buses just like this one.
Looking for a market for natural gas? Try this one on for size. The nation's school bus fleet numbers almost 370,000. Each year, those buses rack up nearly 3.5 billion miles as they pick up and deliver more than 22 million students. And yet, only a few school districts around the country currently operate their fleets on anything other than gasoline or diesel fuel. But that is about to change. The Clean Air Act is a driving force that is causing many states to look at their buses and consider alternative fuels. While the environment is a priority, many of the school districts that have already made the switch to natural gas buses have done so for another benefit: cost savings. The Garland School District in suburban Dallas converted its first buses in 1983.
In our initial package, we converted 60 vehicles. We have 60 slow fill stalls, 2 compressors, and we did that for a turnkey package for $241,000. And then in 1985, we did a separate package on that. We added additional 20 vehicles, 20 slow fill stations, added a compressor, and that was for an initial cost of $106,000. And both of those 2 packages combined, we got our savings back in 5 years. It paid for itself in 5 years.
The Garland District transports more than 10,000 students each day using a total fleet of 176 buses, 80 converted dual fuel buses using natural gas, and the rest running primarily on diesel. Natural gas supplied by Lone Star Gas Company has cost between 30 and 50% less than other fuels over the years, and currently is 37 cents per equivalent gallon of gasoline. Miles per gallon on the converted engines is roughly the same as gasoline and only slightly less than diesel, but maintenance costs are much lower.
Exhaust repairs, are virtually non-existent with our CNG buses because it is a cleaner burning fuel. Our oil change intervals, we've doubled the time between, changing oil on the vehicles, on the CNG vehicles. We've also, as far as changing spark plugs, we've doubled the life of the spark plugs. As far as our experience with it, we've had nothing but good experience. It's been very successful.
Douglas would like to convert the diesel buses in his fleet, but he's waiting for better conversion technology for diesel engines. In the meantime, however, many Texas school districts are going to have to switch to natural gas to meet the requirements of a new state law that says any fleet of 50 or more buses must have 30% of their buses converted to cleaner fuels by 1994, 50% by 1996, and 90% by 1998. With states like Texas and California enacting these tough requirements, the bus manufacturers are responding. Bluebird Body Company of Georgia has just produced its first dedicated natural gas-powered bus and delivered it to the Garland District for in-service testing. The 78-passenger rear-engine bus is the result of a cooperative effort among Bluebird, the nation's largest manufacturer, General Motors, which is supplying the 427 engine, and Tecogen, which is modifying the engine to run on natural gas. Paul Glaske, president of Bluebird, began looking at alternative fuels several years ago. Natural gas was the clear choice.
From our perspective, safety is the first issue we contend with, and we're absolutely convinced it's a safe fuel. Then the economies of it, the pricing of it in today's market is good. The environmental impact is minimal. It's a very, very clean fuel. Domestic supplies in quantities that we can live with for many years, and a whole series of issues like that make this just a really good choice.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you back to Let's Talk. We've been watching a video that's explaining the advantages of natural gas in vehicles and answering a lot of your questions, I hope. But we welcome your calls here at the station. Mark Brown is my guest. Mark is the Deputy Director of Public Works for the City of Covington. We'd like to have your questions and comments about natural gas vehicles, about our new station, anything you'd like to find out about it, we'd be glad to answer those questions. We're going to continue to talk about it, and as we are answering some of the questions, you may think of others that you'd like to ask. Mark, one thing that was mentioned in the video was the state law in Texas that's mandating that their school buses transfer over to natural gas. And there are going to be state laws, there are going to be environmental laws passed by the federal government. We know that with all the vehicles that we have in service and all the pollution that we have, we know that it's coming, that we're going to have to do something to clean up the air. So a lot of these things, if we don't do them on our own, the government's going to tell us to, aren't they?
Well, it's happening not only in Texas, but California, Indiana, Pennsylvania. A lot of these states with major pollution problems are doing it on their own, mainly because the Clean Air Act, the federal legislation from 1990, specifies that certain emission requirements are going to have to be met by 1996 and then another by 1998. And gasoline, the way it is today, just cannot possibly meet those.
I was amazed that one of the men in that video said that he thought gasoline, as we know it today, would be obsolete by the turn of the century. That's a little much, but at least he thought it's not going to be the fuel of the future anyway, is it?
That's what he seems to think. He may be a little bit optimistic about it being a natural gas, but certainly something's going to have to be done. We're going to have to find cleaner burning fuels, whether it's natural gas or methane or whatever. Something's going to have to be done, and natural gas at this time appears to have the best technology behind it.
Mm-hmm. Well, they've been trying to get automobiles, the emission standards of automobiles improved over the past few years, and that's continuing, and I think they are doing that. And with Al Gore as the vice president, he is so concerned about the environment and environmental issues. I feel like those things are going to be pushed even more rapidly than they have in the past, don't you?
Well, I think so also. Just, the city bought the 3 dedicated Chevrolet pickup trucks this year.
What do you mean by dedicated?
They just burn natural gas only. We're going to be converting some of our other fleet trucks to be dual fuels where they can run on both fuels.
Right.
But by the 1995 model year, Ford, Chrysler will also join in with models you can buy on the lot of natural gas.
That have already equipped for that. We have a call now. Yes, you have a question or comment for Mark?
Yes, it's my understanding that in the United States that we have a surplus of natural gas, whereas we're importing much of our fuel at this time. Is that correct?
Well, that's another one of the benefits of natural gas, is that we don't have to rely on the Arab cartel to get our supplies. This natural gas is available here in the United States from American companies, and we have a supply that's 40, 50 years in known fields right now.
That's without even exploring any more areas.
That's right.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Do you have anything else?
Well, if that's so, then we could probably establish a price, and it wouldn't be driven up or down by the supply from Arab countries. Is that correct?
That's right. Obviously, it would be subjected to domestic type things, but that's one of the good things about it, is we don't have to pay ransom to foreign countries for our energy supplies.
Yes, sir. That all you have?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your question. We have another call. Yes, you have a question or comment?
Yes, sir. I was just calling. I have heard rumors of the natural gas being something like propane and igniting and exploding and blowing cars up. What do you got to say about that, about blowing the cars up?
Well, natural gas has been around, and propane too, for a long time. I think one of the important things to know now is that the technology has changed, and it's better technology. And right now in the world, there's over 700,000 natural gas powered vehicles, and there's not one recorded explosion.
That tank is extremely strong, and the video indicated that up to almost 80 miles an hour before the tank was even punctured, and when it was punctured, the gas just went off into the atmosphere because it's under such heavy compression.
It appears to be in all applications a lot safer, a lot more safe than a gasoline tank.
Okay, that's even on compact explosion too, if somebody runs into you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct.
That's exactly right. In fact, you look at the school bus companies, and now all the school bus manufacturers are coming out with natural gas buses, and you got to know that they would not be making anything involving school children that wasn't absolutely positively safe.
So they won't blow up?
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's an excellent question. I think we have another call. Yes, you have a question for Mark?
Yes, sir. About how many miles could you travel with use of one of those cylinders before it has to be refilled?
The largest cylinders that, in fact, the ones the city's going to be buying to put on our converted pickup trucks will hold about the equivalent of 9 gallons. So depending on how many cylinders you have room for in your vehicle and how many miles per gallon you get, that will determine how many miles you get, what your range will be.
But we're talking about 120 to 180 miles, aren't we? Pretty much on
roughly.
one tank.
We're thinking we get about 15 miles a gallon in some of ours, and with 9, around 125 miles would be a range with 1 tank.
So you're limited as to what kind of vehicles you could use it on. Vehicles used for local use and stuff like that, not long-range trips.
Well, certainly the problem now is that there's not a lot of stations out there. Memphis is going to be opening 6 at MAPCO stations sometime this summer or early fall, so there'll be stations in Memphis too, and it's spreading across the South.
Yes, sir. You have anything else? We have one more, and then we're going to do a commercial. Yes, you have a question for Mark?
Yeah, Mark, do you know what the conversion cost is per vehicle?
The conversions are going to be around $2,500. We're exploring ways right now, along with Texas Gas, to provide incentives to make local fleets and just private individuals themselves easier to convert to natural gas.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take your calls again in just a moment, but we need to be true to our sponsor and let Atkins Brothers have their commercial time at this point. And we'll come right back in just a moment, and we hope you'll have more calls coming in. We'll be back in just a moment.